Alright, so independent dependent variables are one of those things that will grow throughout your years in that. So like we start with the very basics of this in sixth grade, then in seventh grade it becomes linear expressions and linear equations, and then in eighth grade, math 1 and so on. It gets a whole lot more complex. Being able to identify your independent, your dependent variables are going to be very important. The way it's going to appear to you on your tests and your quizzes though, is it's going to be either, here's an equation, which graph goes with this, and you have to pick 2 points and plug them in, or here's a graph. Did I just say a graph and an equation? Here's an equation, which graph goes with it. So for the most part, it's just plugging in a value for either x or y and solving that equation, which you guys have, for the most part, seemed like you've done a fairly good job with. So don't let all the craziness make you think that this is a hard concept. It is not that hard. Aiden, what are you playing with? Oh my Lord. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a little bit of notes. Alright, so the independent variable. So you have an independent variable, you have a dependent variable. I have a question. What do you think you are? So you have your parents, and then you have you. So do you think you're the independent variable, or do you think you're the dependent variable? So stand up if you think you're independent. Okay. Stand up if you think you're dependent. All right, so I gotta ask, why do we think we're all dependent on our parents? You have to live with them? Okay. All right. What else makes us think we're dependent on our parents? Delilah?
I mean, I would be broke without them.
Fair enough. All right. William?
They care for you and they try to do stuff for you.
Okay. Billy?
To make a long story short, you rely on them.
Yes. Very much so. So all of the things that you guys just provided essentially determine that you guys are the dependent variable to your independent parents. All right, so the dependent depends on the independent. So that's kind of how I want you to think about this as we're going through it today. All right, so the independent variable is the fixed or constant. All right, so that's always going to be the same. Like that's always going to be like 3t or 3x. So 3 will always multiply whatever the dependent is. So the 3 will always be the same. Okay, that is your independent. It's never going to change. All right, it can be represented by the x coordinate. Or it is sometimes called the control, which you guys may have heard about independent dependent variables in science, haven't you? And- Last year?
Yeah, we learned about the graphs at the very end of the
All right, and then just some examples: time, number of items, so on and so forth. So the dependent variable is the variable that is responsive, which is kind of a real weird word, or dependent on. That's what I want you to remember. The dependent variable is dependent on the independent variable. It can be represented by the y coordinate. And always changes. Okay, so in parentheses, I want you to write change for the dependent variable, and it stays the same for the independent variable. The other thing I want you to put is in parentheses in that gray box, totally wrong. That should be x for independent and y for dependent. Alright, so now we're gonna go through and we're not solving anything yet, but we are learning to identify the independent and the dependent variable in the next couple of questions. So, number one says, Jameson runs N miles and burns C calories. C number of calories. So, which one is the independent? What do you think? Which one is the independent? What do you think? Mhm. So, number of miles he runs, and that determines what? So the number of miles he runs determines what? Don't play with me today, thank you. Mikhail, so the number of calories burned. Alright, so if he ran 1 mile, he's gonna burn X amount of calories. If he runs 2 miles, he's gonna burn X amount of calories. So the number of miles determines the number of calories burned. Alright, number 2. Excuse me. It says the more hours Brady practices, the better his test grade G will be. So what do you guys think is the independent variable? Delilah?
The more hours.
Okay, so number of hours. And what is the dependent variable? The dependent variable. Kyra?
His test grade?
Yep. Alright, so we've done these two. Now this is where your color is going to come in. So I want you to pick a color that's going to represent your independent for the rest of the day. Doesn't matter what color. So I'm going to put a little star next in line with my color. So my color for independent is going to be red. So I'm going to underline runs M miles in my red. And for my dependent, it's going to be this blue. So I'm going to underline burns C number of calories. And then same thing over here. More hours practice, the better his test grade will be. Alright, excuse me. Number 3, Michael pays $8.99 per month for his Netflix subscription. Right, so what is the independent in this one? What's the independent in this one? What do you think, Camden? No, not $8.99, but what does the $8.99 represent?
How much he pays per month.
Okay, so per month is our independent, and then what is our dependent? What's the dependent? So if we know he pays $8.99 per month, and our independent is like I guess it should be number or per month that he's gonna pay for it, what are we determining? What are we determining here? So if I said he paid 6 months worth of Netflix subscription, what would my answer essentially be? Well, don't do the math. Like, I'm trying to figure out the what.
It'd be 6 times whatever the cost is.
Right. So then I'm trying to figure out what. What am I trying to figure out here, guys? Wait. Huh?
And Netflix subscription.
No. Okay.
Cost per month?
No, we already know the cost per month, right? It already tells us that. So if I said I'm paying for 6 months worth of this Netflix, or Michael's paying 6 months worth of this Netflix subscription, Lily told us we would do 6 times $8.99, right? So when we did 6 times $8.99, well, what are we getting? Total what? Huh?
Total price?
Or total cost. So you're just getting Like the dependent is gonna be total cost slash price. Alright, so in this one, our independent is the $8.99 per month. There's technically not a dependent variable in that situation. Alright? Alright, number 4. Excuse me. This is a car travels 60 miles per hour. Alright, so what is our independent in this one? The independent. Ronnie, what do you think? Maybe we're on number 4. A car travels 60 miles per hour.
60 miles per hour.
Leo?
Number of miles.
No? We already know the number of miles, right? So it's not gonna be that. We already know the number of miles. Emma?
A car?
Car travels.
No. I mean, we're running out of things here. We already know the miles. We know it's not the car. Doesn't matter what the car is. It's telling us that it's going 60 miles per hour. Per hour.
Oh.
No. Huh?
Per hour.
So number of hours. And then obviously, if we know that he goes 60 miles an hour, and we know that our independent is gonna be the number of hours, what are we trying to determine? It's kinda like number 3, where it doesn't necessarily have the dependent part in there, but what are we figuring out, knowing that we go 60 miles per hour? Dial.
Phone number. Well,
You're almost there. So miles, what?
I'm gonna say miles per hour, but no.
No. Miles. So if you're going 60 miles per hour, and I say from New Bern or from Havok to Greensboro, and I know that I'm going 60 miles per hour, and it's gonna take me 3.5 hours to get there, what am I figuring out? Yes. Miles traveled. Or total miles, or however you wanna say that. So again, our independent is 60 miles per hour. Alright, you and your group members are doing number 5 and number 6. Stand up when you guys have your answer. that'd be your independent, because you know it's $6 per bag. Don't draw on nothing. Are we asking about what y'all want to do? So, you're right. Alright guys, let's go ahead and go over this. So, for number 5, it says each bag of popcorn costs $6 at the football game. So what is our independent for that one? What's the independent for that one? Troy. Per bag, or total number of bags, however you want to say it. So per bag / total. Alright, and then what is our dependent part of that? It's the dependent part. So far, everybody that I saw that I walked around that had this written down had the dependent part done correctly. Jonathan? Huh?
Is the total cost of all the bags.
So just total cost. Alright, and then in our question, where's our independent? In our question, so like what did you guys underline for your independent? Delilah?
Each bag.
So each bag of popcorn. Okay? Alright, number 6, it says the later Jessie stays up at night, the sleepier she is at school. So what is our independent? The independent. Lily, what do you think?
The amount of time that she stays up.
Okay. Time up or later she stays. Alright, well determine what? So the later you stay up, how do you feel the next day if you don't get to sleep in? Ready?
Sleepy.
Right, so the dependent is gonna determine how sleepy she is. Alright, and then what is our independent in our question? What's the independence? What did you guys underline? Kaya? Okay. Alright, so that was just kind of being able to learn how to identify your independent, dependent variables. So now, let's slide over, and we're starting up here at the top. Alright, and graphs and tables can also display independent, dependent quantities. So it says, use the graph to determine the independent, dependent quantities. Alright. Remember what we wrote over here in our notes about the x coordinates, the y coordinates, the independent, which one is independent, which one is gonna need to use that information to help me answer these questions. So it says list the independent variable. So independent, is that on my x-axis or my y-axis? Is it on the x or the y? Noah? The x. So what that means is I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna find and know that this is x, this is y, and my independent variable is the number of weeks. Alright, so then what is the dependent variable? If the independent variable is the x, it's the number of weeks. My dependent variable is which coordinate? Start with that first. Everybody should have their hand raised because it's all written on your paper. Like, this is not something that you have to pull from your brain, you just simply have to look to the left a little bit. Elisa,
Y.
y. So then, Elisa, what is the title of y?
Total times Y.
Okay, so now we were listing the independent variable and the dependent variable. Now it's asking to list the independent quantities. What that means is you're gonna look at the numbers across the bottom. Alright, those are your quantities on your graph. So what are the numbers of the quantities on the bottom, the x coordinate of our graph? Camden?
1 through 10.
So 1 through 10. Alright, and then what are the dependent quantities? So that's the numbers going up your y coordinate. Kylie,
3 through 30.
how is it increasing though? Because it's not just going 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Increasing by 3s. So,
Do you just rush your
no, good. Alright, so 3 through 30, and you said it's what?
Increasing by 3.
Increasing by 3s. Alright, questions about your graph? Everyone feel okay with it? Alright, so now let's look at the tables. If it will focus, there we go. Alright, so it says list the independent dependent variables for each table. Now, before we do that, I want you to look at your tables and essentially, if I told you to solve one of these, how do you think you would figure out what your rule is? What the rule is. So looking at like the number here and looking at the numbers here, what do you think the rule is here? Or how would you go about figuring out the rule? Say it that way. Aiden?
I would divide 185 divided by 5.
Okay, and if you divide 185 divided by 5, what do you get? Do you know? Okay, so everyone take, and we'll flip my paper over, and I'm gonna do 185 divided by 5. Stand up when you have your answer. Alright, raise your hand and tell me, what do you get? Olivia, what'd you get, sweetie? You said 37? Alright, so we're saying that when we did 5 times 37, we got 185, essentially. Or if you divide 185 divided by 5, you get 37. Either way, it's essentially inverse. So now, we have to check to make sure that rule is correct. So what do you think we need to do next with this table? So we're essentially saying, I personally would do, now that we know that it's 5, or it's 37, I would do 5 times 37 gives us 185, right? So now, I want you to take, and I want you to do 37 times 10. And I want you to see if that works. So what did you guys figure out? Doesn't work. So what's our rule? So you have to have the rule. You have to figure out the rule in order to be able to do tables. So what's our rule? That didn't work, so that's obviously not the option. What happens when you do 15 times 37? Does it work? Do you get 185? I don't know, figure it out. That's what I'm asking. You're doing a little bit of math right now, because today there's not a whole lot of math to be done. Do it on your paper. What y'all figure out? Huh? Doesn't work. Are we making it too hard? Is there a pattern to your graph?
Yes.
Or to your table? Sorry. Let me not call it a graph, because it's not a graph. Well, what's the pattern? Because you should be able to look at one column and the next column and see a pattern that's happening.
Everything increases by 5?
Everything increases by 5. So could that be our rule?
Yeah.
That could be our rule. Sometimes it's gonna be that easy, like to me, like just saying that it's 5, 10, 15, 20, and then 185, 190, 195, 200. Alright, well, that's where we'll get to tomorrow and the next day. But today, just identifying independent, dependent variables. That's our main focus today. Alright, so it says, number of pounds, which is represented by P, and the total weight. So, which one is our independent variable? Number of pounds or total weight?
Number.
Raise your hand, please. Fine. It's the number of pounds. And then obviously, we'll determine the total weight. Alright, the next one. Number of hours to number of miles. Alright, which one is our independent, which one is our dependent? No, what do you think?
Ours is the independent.
And
Pounds is dependent.
alright, as a group, you guys are doing number 7. Stand up when you have that one done. Just number 7, guys, that's it. just number 7.
I'm pretty sure this is not
If you're standing, you are quiet. If you're standing, you are quiet. Alright, have a seat. So what is our independent? Independent. Zoe B. What was it? So number of months. And then our dependent, what's our dependent in this one? Leo, or sorry, Troy,
Total cost.
total cost, yep. Alright, so 8, 9, and 10, it says list the independent, dependent quantities for each table. So instead, we're not identifying the independent, dependent on the line, but we do have to know which one is the independent, which one is the dependent. So the independent for this one and the dependent for this one, we're writing numbers, we're not writing words. So is the independent number of minutes or total words? Number of minutes or total words? Kylie, what do you think?
The number of minutes.
So we're gonna write 3, 6, 9, 12. Alright, and then obviously our dependent is 165, 330, 495, 660. Alright, you guys are doing 9 and 10 together. Stand up when you're done.
So number 9, the independent is hours.
Alright, so for number 9, which one is the independent, which one is the dependent? Start with that. Which one is the independent, which one is the dependent?
The hours, so 1, 2, 3, 4.
Say it again.
The hours, so 1, 2, 3, 4.
I didn't ask that. I said, what is the independent, what is the dependent? So what represents the independent variable? Okay, what represents the dependent variable? Alright, so with that being known, yes, you are correct. It is 1, 2, 3, 4. And then obviously our dependent is 75 hundredths, 1.5, 2 and 25 hundredths, and then 3. Alright, so number 10, which one is our independent, which one is our dependent? Independent, dependent. Zoe R. Huh? Both. I don't want the answer, I want to know which one is the independent, which one is the dependent. Okay, so knowing that it's the weeks, what numbers represent the independent? And which numbers represent the dependent? Alright, I have a question, especially with the table. What do you notice about common words with your dependent variables? There's a common word that happened in a lot of our tables. What was that common word? No. Huh? Oh? Of?
Yeah.
And our dependent?
Oh, no, total.
Total. So total falls here, total falls there, total falls there, total falls there. So 9 times out of 10, if it's total something or if it's asking for the total, that is going to be independent or dependent? What do you think? It's going to be the dependent. All right, and even in our graph up here, you see this word right there, right? There. So again, picking up on key things. All right, go ahead, glue this in. I'm going to pass off for the next activity. Remember, if you need glue, there should be some glue in that little bin back there if it's not already been used. Just make sure you return it, please. Tyler, can you grab that piece of paper from me? Grab that. Alright, go ahead and turn to, or not turn, slide over to the right side of your notebook. And please title it Independent Dependent Variable Practice in today's date. Alright, you are going to be using the paper that we just kind of all did together to help you answer and fill out this paper. I am going to help you a little bit to make sure that you understand enough to do this. Alright, we are using the description right here. So look in the middle of your page where it says verbal description. And it says, a baker can produce 40 cookies, C, every hour. Alright, so what is our independent, what is our dependent? Because that's what we got to figure out. So what is the independent in that scenario? Noah? You said hours? Okay, so number of hours. And then what is our dependent? Mikhail? Number of cookies. Alright, so remembering what colors you represented your independent dependent, I want you to underline the every hour. And then Now, in your table over here, this is gonna be H, this is gonna be C. What does the H represent? What does the H represent? Kaylee, what does the H represent? Okay, so I'm gonna put 1 hour here, and then what does the C represent? Troy? Cookies. So in 1 hour, she makes how many cookies? That, we are told that in our scenario, guys, 40. Alright, so what is the process essentially that we do to figure out how many cookies we get? So what technically did we do in our minds, but we really didn't realize we did? Lily?
Times 40.
Yes. So the number of hours, which is 1 times 40, gave us our number of cookies. Does that make sense? Alright, so the next one I'm going to put on here is 2. So what is our process? What are we going to put in this middle row? What are we going to put in that middle row? Kyra?
2 times 40.
2 times 40, which gives us what?
80.
Alright, put your pencils down. You're not doing any more in that table. You're gonna work together and fill out the rest of the table. Slide over to your graph. So what do we know about our X and our Y? What do we know about the X? What do we know about the Y?
Mine's the up coordinate
Y is the what?
and the higher coordinate.
Okay, but what do we know about independent, dependent variables to X and Y? If you don't know, look at your notes. That's why they're still there. William, what do we know?
The independent variable is the x coordinate.
So I'm gonna make this line my X coordinate, or my independent variable coordinate color so that I remember that. Alright, I want you to do the same on your paper. Now, obviously, I'm gonna make the Y coordinate my dependent variable color. So again, I'm visually reminding myself which one goes where. Now, what are we gonna title the X coordinate? What are we gonna title our independent variable coordinate? Zoe? Number of hours. And Zoe, where did you get that information from? The verbal description, or this box right here. So we identified it here, we put it here, we color coded it here, right? There is a rhyme to the reason of the crazy colors I make you guys use. So then what is gonna be the name of our Y coordinate? Kaya? Okay. So total number of cookies needs to go along the Y. And then the last thing that, well, sorry, I lied. No, you guys can figure out that one. The last thing I'm gonna do to help you guys today is I'm gonna show you how to graph. All right? You all told me that my independent is the number of hours, right? So technically, this is my X coordinate, right? Based off of everything we've done. And technically, the number of cookies produced is my Y coordinate. You guys agree? So, if my X coordinate is 1 and my Y coordinate is 40, with the numbers that go on the bottom, what do you think I need to put along the bottom here for number of hours? Number of hours, based off of what we're doing here. I know we haven't finished it all the way, but what do you think? Kaya? Yes, so this is gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then I'm only gonna label 2 of them, cause I'm not gonna do the math at the moment. What are the numbers that are gonna go up along my lot? Jonathan?
Skip counting starting out from
Right, so you're skip counting for 40, so we know that the first one is 40, the second one is 80. What if I wanted to graph and put a point from my first set of coordinates, 1 and 40? What would I do? What would I do? Kylie?
So on the coordinate you go, on the x coordinate you go to 1, and then you go up to 40 and then go to 40.
Right, so to graph 1 and 40, I'm gonna go 1 to the right, and then I'm gonna go up 1, and I'm gonna put a dot right there. Okay? And then if we wanted to graph the next one, how do I get there? Someone tell me how to get to my next point. Emma?
Go to the right 2 blocks and go up 2 blocks.
Perfect. Alright, you must draw, or you must graph those points on there. So, come on, focus. As a group, you are finishing the table, okay? As a group, you're finishing the graph. As a group, you're writing your equation, which technically you should already know your equation, right? Because we've done part of it in our graph. And then as a group, you're answering 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, if you do not finish before the end of class, it will become homework, so you guys need to work diligently. You guys know what that means, right? Not fast, but go fast with quality.
On topic.
Huh?
Stay on topic.
Yes.
I'm so smart, guys.
Alright, go ahead and get started, y'all.
Isn't it like this? We're not doing that yet. We're doing this.
Make sure y'all are working together. You're not working independently here.